Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Career Lab podcast. We're happy to have everyone on board with us. As you know, Career Lab is the show that's been on, for over 6 seasons now, where myself, Joel Siegel, and America's career counselor, Julie LaCroix, that's the beautiful woman you're seeing on the other side of your screen, is here with me to help special guests and clients and people we work with to understand their career direction, their career challenges, and to help them kind of make sense of the incredibly and increasingly difficult world of careers. So that's what we do on Career Lab. We also veer off into hearing our special guests provide their expertise in the area that they specialize in. And we've had some incredible moments where guests have really shared not only some of their professional experiences, but how they got to where they are, the arc of their career, how they developed into the person and professional they are. So, okay, enough of this babbling from me. Julie, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Joel, and I think that your description of our special guest was just perfect because it's so important that we understand the arc of a career and look at them retrospectively in order to understand how to build one prospectively. And in today's episode, our guest is an extreme expert in the technology field. And not only are we going to hear about his journey as he has kind of weaved and bobbed through technical advancements and built a sustainable career. But we're going to hear about what he thinks the future of tech is given AI and how he's going to be positioning himself. And hopefully some of our listeners who are on the technology trajectory, but earlier in their careers, the entry level, junior level, mid-level professionals, they can take some of these tips today and make them useful cornerstones for their own personal career trajectories.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And also, let me add that one of the things I'm going to be wanting to talk with Brett about is how mid-career professionals who are suddenly waking up and going, oh gosh, there's this thing called AI that everybody's using and is really working well for them. How that, um, how that, excuse me, well, sometimes technology just gets in the way. What are you going to do? But how mid-level and mid-career professionals are not only using AI but understanding how to use it. And I have some personal experiences I can share that hopefully Brett will be able to magnify. So it'll be good. Great
Yeah,
to
not
see
only
you.
how to leverage it, but also how to use it to your advantage in your own career, because there really are two competing schools of thought in the career trajectory of technology. One is, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I want to go into technology because software developers are going to be, gone in 5 years. And I have many clients very, very fearful. And I have other clients who are in technology and they're not afraid of it at all. If anything, they're just like, it's a tool, but it's not nearly as good as we are. And it's just that it doesn't have the precision that a human can have. So there are really two schools of thoughts, and I'm hoping we can explore that a little bit as well to try to get our listeners a perspective on arguments that substantiate the fear that tech jobs are going away and that don't substantiate the fear that tech jobs are going away.
Yeah, I want you to be sure to bring that up. And also,
Hmm.
let me add that, as a business coach and a business consultant, which is what I am, and this just happened actually recently, I've seen the proliferation specifically of AI into a lot of areas that used to be run by other professionals. For example, you don't need to hire necessarily a high level vendor to build your website when AI can build it in less than 20 minutes, and it's probably going to be better. So we need to find out about what that means. There's a lot of people out there whose careers may change as a result of what's happening. And I'm going to share a story when Brett comes in the room. So, okay, well,
Well, and
you
that story that you're going to share about AI building a website in 20 minutes, that's gonna tickle the ribs of writers out there. All the copywriters are gonna, that's a lot. There's a lot to consume here in the AI world. Let's talk to Brett. I can't wait to dig into it.
Okay, well, let's bring him in and let me get him into the show. Um, and we are happy to welcome him today.
Hey, everybody, Julie LaCroix here from the Career Lab podcast. Just want to give a shout out to Douceur Global Education. Douceur.education is the website. If you're looking for an easy access, low price, online solution to getting an MBA, Douceur Global is your place to go. They offer amazing faculty, incredible speakers, customized education to your line of work. And do you need a bachelor's degree? You don't. If you have 5 years of management experience or equivalent and you're looking to advance your career, maybe move out of a family business, move into a different company in your current industry where they're looking for some additional training, or you just want to be promoted and get some professional development, please reach out to Douceur Global. It's douceur.education. They have the solution for you. It's a wonderful intersection between professional mobility and academic pathway, academic progression. Douceur Global Education.
Brett Gregor, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Joel. Great. Thank you for asking. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Brett. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
Good.
Brett, we want to start by thanking you for coming on the show.
Yes.
We've had a lot of special guests on the show in a lot of particular professional areas of expertise, and they have added so much content value for our listeners. And we thought today would be a particularly good time to have someone like you with your tremendous background and level of expertise on the show, both to talk about technology, to talk about the future, and of course, to talk about AI. So
Sure.
We're happy to have you on. And we like to start with our guests usually by hearing a little bit about their career journey, since careers are what we deal with. And you've reached a point in your career now where you, of course, have your own company. You've had it for, I think, 12 or 14 years. You've had a number of big clients as a consultant working with your own company. And that's an interesting part of your career journey in itself. So why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about your career story?
Sure. I'd love to. Thanks for having me on. I'm a little unusual where I started very, very young as a programmer. My father was an immigrant, so to speak, from Australia and tried his luck at various firms in the States. And he was an accountant, became a CPA, and ended up working at and owning a very large CPA firm in California. This is back in the 70s. And he had the vision to let computers do as much as possible to do bookkeeping, et cetera. And so for quite a while there, he had the second largest mainframe in Orange County, California.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I would, as a single digit child, 8, 9 years old, tag along with him in the evenings or the weekends, back when you used to have to do reel-to-reel backups and all that. He'd sit there and do the backups. And I said, look, I poked around the computers. They were terminals. And he taught me how to program. And then I taught myself looking at programs. I reverse engineered programs. And by the time I was 10, I was a full-blown programmer. I literally bought a book on
Wait, let me interrupt you.
checkers.
Did you say by the time you were 10?
Yeah, I
Okay,
know. I
just
told
wanted
it's a
our
little unusual.
listeners
And so I
listeners
was
to
sitting
get that.
programming mainframes. And we're not just talking like print hello on a screen. I'd bought a book on the algorithms of chess, and programmed that into the thing. I wrote a Monopoly thing where you played against the computer with the strategy. And it's not a braggart thing. I just got lucky. I followed dad along to work. It could have been anything. Sat there doing nothing, learned how to program. And so that transitioned through college. I wrote a bunch of programs, made a bunch of money on the side while I was at college. And then out of college, helped write a very big accounting platform. And then from there, just was a hotshot programmer in my 20s and 30s. We can talk a little more about that, one particular company I work for. And that kind of transitioned into, as software became more of a thing, Windows became a thing, client server technologies as opposed to terminals talking to a mainframe, all that migration started to happen and kind of started to become more of a team leader, not just as in a corporate environment, but then just, was starting to ask, can you help here? Can you help there? So I got lucky in my late 20s. I was working for Cooper's Lybrant in their solutions department. If you remember back then, all the big six, the big eight, bought big IT consulting firms, Anderson Consulting, what have you. And I was working for Cooper's Lybrand. And what would happen there is you'd have about a 9-month project and then about a 3-month break, and a 9-month project and a 3-month break. And I loved working there. It was a lot of fun. And worked with some really smart people, again, working kind of on mainframe stuff in my 20s. And one of the 3-month breaks, I answered a classified for a local, very small company who needed some programming help. And it was a 3-month project, which was perfect for my 3-month break. But I got it done in about 3 weeks, helped them do some other stuff, and on I went and did another project. And what happened was the day I finished a 9-month project with Cooper's Lybrand, the company that I'd done the 3-week project with literally called the same day, hey, we're going to hire our first IT person. Are you interested? And they were a very small firm, 16 to 20 employees, a couple million in revenue. I said, sure, came on board. And over a 15-year period, we grew that company to be $1 billion company. Just got lucky. And so that's where I got my chops in managing people, and also hyper growth. There was one point in time where we grew from about 150 million to $1 billion in revenue, in run rate revenue. Gosh, it depends on how you look at it, anywhere between 9 to 18 months. So got really, really exposed to, 10 to 20% growth per month over month, So I got lucky. And so the hotshot programmer needed to hire more people, needed to manage them, and just kind of grew into studying and learning how you actually start to manage people. I got lucky also, I'd have to say, where with my programming skill set, which grew into infrastructure knowledge also, other engineers working for me tended to enjoy working with me because I wasn't just a paper pusher. I could not only read the code they wrote, it was probably, and I apologize, I don't mean to be this narcissistic, but probably a better programmer than them. And so that worked a lot in a growth trajectory of managing more and more people, because we had a camaraderie of knowing code and knowing systems and knowing databases, and engineers like that, right? They kind of look, I apologize for everybody out there, but they kind of look sideways at guys who are just managing tickets and mostly managing upwards, So I got lucky with that, with a broad skill set and multiple programming languages and infrastructure knowledge, and I kind of grew out of being a hotshot programmer into being a manager. I got a little lucky too, where my personality, even back when screens were just terminals, to kind of care that the person sitting in front of a screen was getting their job done. And that's grown into respecting the customer, what we now know to be the customer experience, known as CX. And so I'm at a stage now in my career where over the past 5 or 10 years, and I would advise this to engineers because it worked, I really drank the Kool-Aid on the whole customer experience, or what's known as the whole software development lifecycle. And in the software, and so that's a broader picture of processes. When you're an engineer and you're a programmer, you got all this stuff in your head, you know better than everybody else, and you just pump out code. And much to the frustration of a lot of people, where, okay, it's working, but it's not kind of what we were expecting. And I would offer to people who are coming out from an engineer and want to broaden their scope of work to manage people, work down, work up, work with vendors, to really respect processes. And that's hard for good, maybe even talented engineers to do, because they can just pump work out. And I started embracing, I was even called a cowboy when I was in my 20s and 30s, right? And not that I didn't respect management, but I could pump out a bunch of stuff fast. And I started respecting the processes, most specifically software development lifecycle, which is design, develop, and deploy, and really embrace the design side and really embrace the full breadth of it, not just business requirement documents supported by a couple of mock-up JPEGs, but really the whole process of truly having empathy for the users and all stakeholders. And the whole process that exists for it, which I could talk for hours about. So I drank the Kool-Aid on that 5 or 10 years ago, and the benefits have been extraordinary. Because if really at the end of the day, you want to pump out at the very last result of what you're putting an executable on people's desktops or loading it onto a platform that hosts on the internet, if you really want to produce something that is of identified value for the stakeholders or customers, you got to talk to them. 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 You got to talk to them up front. And so I would offer out there that the design phase is, I actually preach now, that's where a product is built, in the design phase. And in the development phase, sure, surround yourself with as many talented vendors and on-site or off-site engineers that you can get your hands on, who have experience not only maybe in your industry conduit, but also have been around the block a time or two, understand concurrent users and expeditious events happening. That, you get kind of what you pay for there. But I would offer that a product is built now in the design phase, and that's coming from a guy who spent first, if not first, 2/3 of his career with fingers on a keyboard typing code. So that's kind of my journey, has been to embrace the customer experience, customer empathy, and everything that is user interface, user experience, all the stuff you hear about. There's a massive ecosystem for that stuff. There's a massive ecosystem because it works. It pumps out great product. And at the end of the day, that's what one should care about. So that's kind of been my journey. Hotshot programmer, moving in to manage it, respecting the whole customer experience through processes and an ecosystem that exists to make that product as good as possible.
So what kind of things are you attracted to working in now when you take on a company client as a client? What are given your background and your skill set and the arc of your career, what are the things that, well, not just work for you remuneratively, but also in terms of, your development and what you're interested in?
Yeah, good question. What tends to happen with myself or us is we get brought in to solve a problem at first. Maybe a software project that they think went sideways. Their internal budget was $500,000. They're $400,000 into it, and they have nothing to show for it, or it's not what we were thinking. So I'll come in and do a lot of strategic bashing of telling them, look, you expected the guy who's in charge of your phone system to go build software. And I get it, but that's not how software is built. And so I'll advise them on how software is built. They'll see the gaps. They'll see the gaps in their hosting infrastructure, why the current systems they have are slow, hard to update, long outages, that kind of stuff. So we'll come in from a software project standpoint or an infrastructure standpoint, help remediate existing or in-flight projects. And that tends to lead to, okay, sounds like these guys know what they're talking about. Let's get them in actually to maybe take certain portions of this over. That tends to be the trajectory of what we do, myself included as a CTO kind of guy. So
I know that you're, kind of a CTO who goes into companies and works on these things. Are you working individually? Do you have a team you work with, or do you use the existing team on the ground for the companies?
Yeah, what I've done
for
15 to 20 years now, it started just me, hotshot programmer, moving into management. But I would say here in the States, I've got double-digit people, mostly in California, up and down, or mostly on the West Coast, that help mostly with infrastructure, because at times that requires some hands-on sitting in front of switches, getting into data centers, not just remotely, but getting in there. Then when it comes to the coding, I've got teams dedicated to me, which are usually portions of larger consulting firms dedicated to me in our projects. A design firm overseas, a enterprise level development firm overseas, and I've got dedicated dozens of people on either of these who work on our projects. So that's kind of how we're managing it.
Okay. Julie, want to jump in here?
Oh, I think Brett's intelligence and application of it through experience is impressive. I love to see that you started as a specialist at 8 years old, quickly became an expert by 10, and were making money um, pumping out programming projects by the time you were in your early 20s, and that you didn't stop there, that you, instead of going inward and more focused on the specialty of coding, you actually branched outward into leadership skills, team building skills, business problem solving skills, um, client problem solving skills, and you pushed your own capacity for intellectual rigor to be able to um, take two very disparate abstract um, entities, one a need of a client, defining that, and then the capacity of your software team or yourself, and figuring out how to make those two abstract entities click together. And once you were able to do that, you can now do it on a very large scale. And I just think that's so impressive. And people like you are mind-boggling to me. I mean, Joel and I have expertise, and we can certainly skate on any career counseling or business coaching ice skating rink, but you can certainly skate on anything software development.
Thank you
And
for saying those kind words. I got a little lucky also, though. I got in so early to this whole computer thing.
right.
Back when, you had mainframes. Hell, I was just in a mainframe a month ago. A new client of ours has a 30-year-old mainframe. It's hilarious. And it was funny to see, types of commands I hadn't typed in 30 or 35 years. But, back then, computational resources were so minimal. I mean, literally the mainframe literally had
That was
16 kilobytes. And the dishwasher, the washing machine sized spindle magnetic hard drives were 10 megabytes. And I'm sure people are going to hear this. They're going to, I remember those days. You'd pull it out and it'd be this massive cylinder and literally the accounting firm would pull out receivables and put in payables, and it held 10 megabytes. And so I got lucky where with limited resources, you have to do things unbelievably efficient, unbelievably. And that carried through my whole career where look, you can squeeze more out of this efficiency, just efficiency, big thing. And people have a luxury now of terabytes of data and gigabytes of RAM. And and I end up being now the adult supervisor in the room of like, look, we can, let's not make this sloppy, let's make it tight and efficient. And it just comes from that. Also, out of college, one of my first big projects, as it says, I was part of the engineer writing a very large accounting platform, payables, receivables, general ledger, job costing, multi-state payroll, fixed assets with unlimited depreciation methods. I got an MBA in accounting, and accounting's the same thing. Everything's balanced, debits and credits, and so I got lucky in my 20s where I was around, you got to be efficient because you have limited resources, and make sure everything's tidy and balanced. And these days in systems, that's logging things. When there's an event, log it. Et cetera, et cetera. So I got lucky with some good habits because of limited resources when I started.
Well, you've certainly taken that a long way. There's a couple of things we really want to get to in your segment, so let me make sure we do that.
Yep.
The first one, Julie, I think you wanted to ask Brett about technology as a career, where people are with that, because you do a lot of career counseling. And so why don't you go ahead with that, and then I'll ask my question about AI.
Perfect. Yeah. So I want to, this is a great background. Thank you for sharing it with us, Brett. Let's pivot it to something that can build on what you've just described as your career journey. You've called it lucky, and basically explained to us that you came to technology on the precipice of an explosion. And I think we're there now. I think AI is about ready to explode. If not, there's an argument that it is exploding. So talk to us about that. Just get down and dirty with us. What should young people and mid-career professionals be thinking about in terms of their technology careers, specifically programming careers, given the flood of AI tools coming to market? I have clients in technology who have given me both sides of the argument. I had a client 3 weeks ago afraid to go to, he's 2 years into a programming role and he's afraid to stay in it because he thinks AI is going to take over all the programming jobs. I had a client 2 days ago who is a programmer, more senior. He's 34 years old, so he's 12 or 13 years into his career, is well established at Google, coding software, and he thinks AI is something that is not going to take careers. He's very skeptic of it. Tell me your opinion. Talk to us. What can young people glean from your knowledge?
Yeah. So AI is moving obviously extraordinarily rapidly. I mean, I have as a pre-story here, I have a client that we occasionally do work for, and they're implementing an AI platform that will help expedite and lift the quality of work of some very low-level documentation that they pump out at a high frequency. And even that AI firm and other AI firms I speak to or speak with say they can't keep up with it. And it's the business they're in. People like me are here to implement AI. Some companies want to pump out their own AI model, et cetera, and train against a data set. So that's my precursor story is this stuff's moving unbelievably fast. But where it's kind of, in my opinion, and I read a lot and have to stay on top of it, because my role as a CTO is to be the liaison between other upper management who sometimes look at IT as a black box, and they just want it to do stuff. And I've got to be that liaison of explain things in layman's terms and go do the complicated stuff. And when you look at AI to a programmer, my opinion, and what I see with my own guys and vendors I'm working with, it's just a massive efficiency tool right now. Is it going to replace things? There's an argument 4 or 5 years from now or never. My personal experience, seeing the code AI pumps out with, it needs massive adult supervision. It's not code you would take, cut and paste, and throw into production. It's just not. Could it get there? Maybe. But definitely right now for the next couple of years, it's a tool. Most people say it's shaving 20 to 30% off of the time that used to take to write the same thing then versus now. It's taking about 30% less because it's a nice adjunct tool to keep moving forward and get stuff done more efficient. And one could argue all sorts of things have happened in the past 20 or 30 years that do the same thing. And development environments keep getting better to make your job better. And AI is just a part of it. I don't know if I want to throw out there if AI is going to replace coders. My opinion, I wouldn't ever let it. I would never let AI develop code go into production. Just like today, you wouldn't let hotshot coders code go straight into production without it being reviewed by peers, QA'd, automated testing, all the things we do. So I would believe AI code still deserves to go through all that stuff because production's too important for that. It's just making certain things move a lot faster, more efficient. And I think that might be the way for a time to come. Having said that, one of the things AI is doing is really low level, easy stuff it's replacing. Sure, if you're 1 year into a coding, AI is going to be a better coder than the guy who only just learned JavaScript 6 months ago. It's just going to be. But you stick to it. And I think what AI is proving also is more and more applying business savvy and a breadth of knowledge. And AI is a tool into getting a job done. It's not the thing that does all of it. That's what I'm saying.
What advice would you give somebody coming out of college this year or last year or the year before with a software engineering degree?
Who wants to pursue being in the software business or IT in general? Yeah. So it depends on what your passion is. So one of the things that's neat about programming is your problem solving, your building, you push compile, and right there in front of you is your work. There's no delay. If there's an issue, pound away on the keyboard again, and there it is. It's really satisfying. And if you are built like that, and it's not just you're getting into coding because software eats the world, as Mark Andreessen says, right? But it's you have that mindset to build and you get the satisfaction of a completed project, you have to stick with it, because software, even if there's more tools, is so broad between databases, the massive infrastructures, which are all service bases, the AWSs and the Azures and all that. It's such a gigantic ecosystem. Look at the top 10 valued companies on the planet, right? What half of them are, that you're gonna be okay if you have a passion for problem solving and the satisfaction of a result. You'll be okay. It's like me and my accounting background. I'm glad I learned debits from credits and what making a journal entry is in a ledger. I've gone back to that forever. So at minimum, your coding background is going to serve you, whether eventually coding is the thing you do or not. I would say stick to it, especially if you have a problem-solving mindset. Stick to it. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, let me ask you another question then that was mine. I deal mostly with established professionals in service industries, companies that have made a mark, but they're really still building and growing. And I do tremendous amount of consulting with those groups. So the question that I'd like you to respond to, that I know will help my clients, is these mid-level professionals who are well on their career journey and have established either a business, a company, or a service profession that's coming along well, and have kind of been knocked back by AI in the sense of what it can do. Here's a couple examples. I was in a training, a networking group, pretty powerful networking group several weeks ago, where a top level AI person came in and actually built a website for an executive coach in an hour and 20 minutes. And while that had a lot of babble and a lot of problems, it was, pardon my French of the word, damn good. It was really good work. So I was also in another training about a month ago where a coach utilized AI as a co-coach, working with a client, a business client. And the results of that were, I have to say, impressive. So the question is, what is this large body of professionals who are in their mid-career? What do they do with this? Do they get trained? Do they react? Do they resist? What do you think the proper path forward for them is to continue to they're not going to be coders ever, not interested in that, but they want to be current with what the latest technology is.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Number two, I'll come back to number one, is you got to stay current on this stuff. And that is a weekly endeavor of read, and stay on top. It's moving fast. It's kind of settling a little who the players are, what models do you use with those players, et cetera, who's using those models to do certain things. It's very exciting, but you have to stay on top of this stuff. It's part of your job now. You're going to have to stay on top of the tools, which would have always been anybody's job for anything.
Right.
No matter what you're doing, running a shop that has plastic injection molding machines, you got 30 of them, you got to stay on top of polycarbonates and better tooling. You just have to, or your clients are going to go elsewhere who's more on top of it. And same here, you got to stay on top of these software movements. And it's just, subscribe, read, play with all these AI things. You're going to have to. But I still think it's an adjunct to what you do. Sure, it pumps out better quality. So great. A website that would have taken 80 hours now takes 8. You still have to have people who know what a good website is, and to pump out that quality. You're just doing it faster. If I could talk on about that, but
that's a good answer, because it really.
Yeah, number two, you have to stay on top of it, like you did anyway, but now it's just a little more rapid. And number one, then you just got to embrace this stuff. You're just going to,
And let me back up just a little bit, because I get this question every day from clients who are interested in, utilizing AI to the level that it can be effective with their business, but they don't know anything. And their question to me is, where do I find out? Where do I get trained? What do I do? So, give our listeners a little course in that.
Yeah, sure. Without being favorable to any particular vendor, there are a lot of great, look, I don't mean to say this, but just follow Instagram and you'll get some great AI coaching environments, of where to go learn the basics of this stuff. Using AI comes down to be fairly simple, actually. The art of prompting, which is really easy to do once you kind of figure it out, and then just applying the best tools to the job. And that's it. Also, I'd like to say there isn't one. Even with the big boys, your Open AIs and Geminis, and they're all fantastic products. They all kind of have their bend and apply the right ones to the job you're doing, whether it's market research, coding, just general teasing ideas back and forth. You need to know which one is better for what, and you kind of have to stay on top of it. It's not a lot, but go do 30 to 60 minutes of being trained and what all the differences are. It's just like you have to learn an email client. You probably know really 2 or 3 email clients. You probably know your way around Gmail, probably know your way around Outlook, and you probably know your way around Outlook app. We just all do, right? Same with AI. You're just gonna have to go play with all. They're all free. Go test them all, and then stay on top of which one does what, and just kind of stay on top of it. It's part of your job now. It's part of your career. You have no choice.
It's part of professional development, and knowledge is power. It's interesting that this reminds me, it's a little bit of an antiquated story, but it still holds true to this day. I type for a living. I mean, I do career counseling one-on-one with my clients, but at some point we move into a resume, and that's a screen sharing experience where customer experience is important. I don't want to be a slow typist. I don't want to not know my way around formatting a Word document. I need to know how to use the software quickly and efficiently, and not make mistakes with it, so that the experience is not boring and that it's moving forward and it's productive. So I remember I had to upgrade my Microsoft Word software, and I went into my office on a Saturday morning. I took a cup of coffee and I sat there from 9 a.m. till noon, and I just went across the ribbon left to right, and I just looked at everything. I practiced everything until I got a feel for every single tool that I would need. And that investment of 3 hours made me an expert overnight. And I hit the ground running on Monday with my first resume, and I've never looked back. And had I not invested in myself to learn that tool and tolerate the tedium of sitting there clicking through every single option on the screen, I would have looked not as professional. I would have felt behind the 8 ball. I would have had to apologize for my slowness or my mistakes or having to look for something. And I'm glad that I invested, because it made me feel a lot more confident. I still learn all the time. There's still stuff that rolls out, but in the spirit of investing in yourself and keeping up with your industry as it changes, just because, just like Brett is saying, it's, just because the industry is moving faster, and this is an incredibly momentous change, it's not the first shift in the economy. It's not the first major contextual or paradigmatic change. It's just one that we have to embrace and invest a little research in.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you need to know about it. Sorry, you need to. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this advice
So
and
interesting.
your expertise is just so sanguine and so relevant and so important to what's happening. And I think that, the ideas you've shared for both entry-level professionals that Julie talks to a lot, and certainly all the mid-career professionals that I talk to, is very important. And I was really hoping to get that feedback from you so I can go turn around and share that with them. A lot of them who have begun to explore and accelerate and utilize AI make the unfortunate mistake of just utilizing the tool without bench checking, doing the actual work, making it better. They just feel like what they've cranked because they don't really have experience in content experience in writing or any of that stuff. So I think this is a very important step you've shared that we can all take.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify that the reason that I'm focusing so much on the entry level experience given the AI environment is because at the mid-career or senior level in career where you are, Brett, and your peers, you have the other skills. You've got the leadership, the management, the architecture, the conceptualization, the problem solving, the UI UX, the client experience. You have all of those other specialties that employ you. A younger worker just coming out is going to be hired for programming skills, period. And so it's a very zero-sum game for them, whereas somebody further along in their career has more of a suite of professional skills. So I think the fear is, from what I'm finding, the fear is greatest at the entry level right now.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to to mention and compliment you on. I work with a lot of companies that have engineers, and historically, engineers have incredibly poor soft skills. I mean, incredibly poor, beyond belief how poor they
Be
are.
nice. Come on.
So one of the things that I do is I help engineers and other professionals like this improve their ability to communicate interpersonally, to
Mhm.
match challenges, to become
There you
more
go.
effective. And it sounds like
Right.
you really are kind of like, because you got to a place where you began to use managerial and interpersonal skills more readily early on. You really got to a point where that's become a master skill for you as well. And you're now kind of a senior
It might be now,
interpersonal.
but it took a while. I mean, I wasn't an
Right.
introvert, but
Right.
the world's black and white, and it's not. It's gray, and there's multiple people that you have to interact with. And some are grumpy, and some are want to move forward, and some don't because they're full of fear. And right, you got to learn all that stuff. And that might be, Julie, to the point of the people who coming in and their fear of AI, but they're gonna have a career. So get in, fight through it, and learn, and go broad and deep, and go in the warehouse and see how they pick, pack, and ship. Go into the R&D lab and see the chemicals they're playing with. You got to move around and keep learning, and not just live where you're going to be, and then you broaden your skills, and then you have more value to add. So I think this is just an amazingly powerful tool, but it's not perfect AI, and you still got to be what you've got to be to offer value, which is our brain. And I think we're okay.
You know,
So
that's
we're
a
going to add mentoring and coaching others, younger people on a team to your set of skills because that was really good advice. And
yeah,
that's why you are a CTO. So thank you so much
absolutely.
for.
And today's episode, I think, will really help listeners clarify a number of these questions, which Julie and I had going in. So all I can do is thank you, Brett, for not only sharing it, but sharing it in a way that I think is ultimately very accessible to people and made it clear kind of where the boundaries are, what they need to do, what really works. And coming from someone as senior as yourself, it's very meaningful. So we're going to
Thank you.
wrap up this morning. We want to thank you for joining the show. Our podcast is available on all outlets, and
Yep, great. Thank you very much. Yep.
okay, thanks so much.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you
Brett.
soon.
Okay. Thanks, guys. See you
Take
later.
care. Well, let's wrap up this episode of Career Lab by talking a little bit about our special guest today, Julie. What are your thoughts?
I think change is always scary, but it's always going to happen. Death, taxes, change. Can't avoid them.
Yeah, well,
He
that's
gives
you.
great
You're
advice.
always so practical about things.
Yeah,
Change,
but
change, change.
he gives great advice, Don't look around, drop your pencil, get your fingers off the keyboard and learn about the business at large. That's really good advice for a young person. And I'm really glad that he mentioned that because I think unless you're in the business office of an organization, you don't think to do that. But that's great advice for a technical performer in the company to look around and understand the context of what you're building. I love that.
Well, I think in some ways it's going to be easier for some of the younger adults that you coach because they're coming out with a primary technology background that, mid or older level professionals don't have. And I think it's going to be easier for them. I think the mid-career, mid-level professionals for them, I think what you said a minute ago is really the buzzword change is scary.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. A lot of people are, these are clients and companies that I work with are it's not that they don't have the skills, but they have anxiety about approaching new things that they're really not comfortable with. That's why I asked Brett specifically about some of the basic learning experiences that one should get to be able to get over that and to get to a place where they can use these tools and use them effectively. Because what I was saying to him a minute ago when I asked him about that was that a lot of my clients jump in without knowing anything, and then they don't really use the tools well, like they just use ChatGPT and they don't really edit it. They don't use it.
Right.
I was at a client yesterday who said, look at this thing that ChatGPT wrote for me. And I thought, this isn't going to work. You're
No,
going to need to apply your own
no.
professional skills to
Yeah.
that AI production.
It's a tool. This whole argument is a good, solid foundation for encouraging technical students to get a minor. If you're going to major in computer science, get a minor. Get a minor in econ, information systems, psychology, accounting, like Brett said, because
Music, art. Okay.
music,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Music production and software
Right.
development are not that far differentiated, to be
Right.
honest with you. It's linear and creative. But if you want to secure a major that is gonna lead to a technical career, there's nothing wrong with branching out early. Get a minor in anything, the classics, anything that's gonna build your foundation of knowledge and skills and thinking capacity so that when you do go to work, you see things differently than the programmer sitting next to you.
Great
Variety is
advice
important.
from America's Career Counselor. Okay, well, we'll be back soon with another episode of Career Lab. Julie, it's always great to see you. And we've enjoyed having our special guest today. So remember, we're available everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, all the normal channels. And we have an incredible backlog of really good shows that feature a lot of very talented special guests like the one we had this morning. So check it out. See what you
Or
can
work with
find.
us, JulieLaCroix.com or JoelSiegelPh.D.com.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.